Success for me is a good career, is a good salary, it's being able to kind of show that to everyone. And maybe I haven't put the time and effort into the things that actually matter to me, my relationships, and therefore they're no longer there.
Welcome to Success Leaves Clues, the podcast where we interview business owners on how they built their businesses and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is David Wynn, and I'm a business coach and the founder of Purple Circle, where we help business owners achieve their first 6-figure, 7-figure, and 8-figure year, all without sacrificing their quality of life. Before becoming a business coach and before founding Purple Circle, I started and scaled several 7- and 8-figure coaching businesses, and have been a consultant at several businesses doing over $100 million each, including some that are publicly listed and doing over $1 billion each. In every episode of the podcast, you're going to learn lessons that took our guests years to learn, and you'll be able to learn that in minutes. No matter if you're a new business owner or an established business owner, every episode is going to give you the clues in order to elevate your business.
Welcome to Success Leaves Clues podcast. I'm Pedro, and today I'm joined by Ellinor Glesner. Ellinor is the founder of Ekvilum, a boutique leadership development firm she launched in 2020, providing executive coaching, workshops, and training for founders and high-performance teams. She spent nearly 20 years in finance and fintech across London and Copenhagen, holds an MSc in information management and finance, and is an ICF certified coach. Welcome to the show, Ellinor.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great to have you, right? And, I got to tell you something about me, Ellinor. I'm kind of a comic book nerd myself, So, love the origin stories, love the first editions. So let's rewind a little bit, okay? Because every entrepreneur has that moment where they look at their life and say, yeah, I guess this is what I'm doing now, right? So when was that for you, Ellinor?
I mean, I thought I was doing what I was doing before becoming a coach for, as you said, for almost 20 years. I was doing my kind of finance and fintech job. And I thought that's what I was going to do. At the same time, I realized that I'm probably not quite myself. I'm not, I don't really know who I am anymore. That was my realization that I got in 2018 when I applied for another role within the bank. And at that point, that kind of caused a huge crisis for me, because I realized that I was completely tied to my identity and didn't really know who I was anymore. And I had been this kind of high achiever, an insecure overachiever, I would say. So I was always focusing on the outside rewards, and I was focusing on my job and not really my family, which I realized at that time that I paid a high price for this. So that kind of took me to the route or to the road where I'm now. So I had to go to a retreat for 5 days in northern Sweden, actually, to really kind of dig deep. And then I remember that I had a coach back in London, a career coach. And when I had her a long time ago, I thought that was amazing. And what she was doing with, my mindset, with psychology, with just kind of being able to question all the mental models that I had, that was amazing. And I had kind of forgotten about that. And when I knew that that's what I wanted to do, I wanted to kind of give the same opportunity to other people, and really at the core of it, get people to reconnect with themselves. Because that's kind of what I had lost, the connection to myself. And that took me a while to really get that connection again. And I realized, just in the field that I am or was in, that we kind of lose ourselves. We get attached to the wrong things. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be in that kind of area or, work hard or anything, but there's different ways of working, right? And different types of, is it a whip that you use, or is it a carrot, or what drives you? Is it healthy? Is it meaningful?
So I was like in banking, and then 2008 happened.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you know what happened in 2008, subprime crisis, right? So I'm in Brazil. People are, getting houses for dogs, even in the US, and I'm impacted. And I was like, my identity was so connected to being at the bank that in a way, and that was a mistake. I know that now because I'm a career coach, right? I kind of buried my past self. Like, I'm not doing banking anymore. Although that was not my fault. It was all like external. But in a way, it was like this past life is dead to me, which is obviously a mistake because that's part of my story, right? And I need to own that. But the thing I need to ask you here, because that I felt that on my skin, is like it seems like our identity are so connected to the corporate roles we're in. Because I worked and after down the road, I worked at Ernest and Young here in Brazil, was a consultant and all that. So do you feel like corporates suppress in a way our true selves, like to fit us into a box?
I don't think that's corporate by itself at all. I think it's our upbringing. I think it's especially our Western culture where everything is, we're kind of taught that success is, status, it's money, it's, how you can show off to other people. And I think maybe that's got even worse today where it's very much a comparison game. So I don't think it's the problem of the corporate itself, but it can, if you are insecure, which most of us are, to be honest, in a corporate environment, it can really trigger a lot of this. So it gets even more emphasized.
Got it. Okay. Now, I'm curious about a couple things. And one of the things I'm really curious about is like you were coaching, right? But not in your own business. But 6 years ago for Ekvilum, you eventually launched your business, right? So walk us through that, the reason why having it for yourself, becoming an entrepreneur and how that felt. Because I'm a corporate SKP, right? And then we have corporate and we have all this well-oiled machine running in the background. Sometimes we don't even care about sales, leads, business development. It's like just more work in our desk, right? But then we launch our business. We're like, oh my God, I have to handle a lot, right? So can you walk us through that shift from, working as an employee and coaching, and sometimes it's contract based and all that. And when you decided to launch your own thing?
Well, the thing is, I actually went from banking. So I did, when I got my coaching, certification, I was coaching on the side kind of for free just to get experience. And I thought, I'm doing a pivot here. I had never done any coaching before. So to be able to sell something that, I felt insecure about, I wanted to feel more confident. So I was doing a lot of free coaching actually. And I'm married to an entrepreneur. So the whole kind of startup world is very interesting to me, and because I've seen his struggles and so on. So I was doing a lot of free work. And then it wasn't until then I started my own business. And then I left the investment bank I was working for, actually. So then I did a complete pivot. And that was scary because, I'm used to having a good salary. I'm used to also having that safety net of, as you said, you know kind of what you're working on. You may not love your job, but it pays well. It's challenging. It's fun to some degrees. So it was more that pivot. And then of course COVID hit. So then I had to do homeschooling with my children. So it was a lot of things. But I must say I felt, and it was that for me, that was very scary, of course, as it would be for everyone. But I felt almost like I was kind of led by, a higher power in a way, because it felt like, I was led like this. This is what you're doing, Ellinor. Now you're starting this business of yours. Now you're going down this path and it feels right. Yes, it's really scary, but it feels incredibly right. So my kind of mental image I have from that year is like I'm walking on a very steep mountain and I'm like, don't look down. That's too scary. Just focus on this now. And then I got into I got connected with a Swedish coaching company, actually, where I was doing consultancy for them. So it was a lot of online coaching. And then because I had done a lot of free work, I started to get some clients out of them, like recommendations, based on recommendations. So it was okay, actually. And I also think it was good for me to be able to kind of also feed my inner nerd of just doing lots of courses, reading, learning, psychology, all sorts of things. So it was a kind of a blessing in disguise, but at the time it was pretty tough.
Interesting. Okay. I want to unpack a little bit on the free stuff, right? Because I've seen a lot of coaches out there burning themselves a little bit when they were trying to do, pro bono free stuff, like people no showing, people that lacked commitment and all that. But in a way, it sounds like that was good for you. You put in the reps, right? You would test yourself because that was like a pivot and you want to test yourself. You still had that, the job, but you had that going on the side. And also, you mentioned you got some referrals, right, from that company because you started doing for free. So can you walk us through the experience of doing free work, like in coaching, and how did that played out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the free work was actually good for me at the time, as you said, because it gave me a lot of experience. But I think we have to be very careful as coaches, because I think we have typically the personality of wanting to help, wanting to serve, and have really difficulties to then ask for money all of a sudden. That feels like, whew, almost forbidden, and like, this individual that I'm helping, how can I possibly ask for money? And that's really a hurdle we need to get over. So I think what I was doing is I was kind of trying to reframe that as in, this is an investment for them. And we all know that when we invest something, we do take it more seriously. And also, come on, why should I offer my time, my experience, my knowledge, everything else for free? This person needs it. It's a trade. So kind of reframing it that way, and yeah, really see it as an investment that they're doing.
I like it. Like there's a trade-off behind it, right? But at the same time, if you're creating or helping them create the outcome, the transformation, like it's only fair you get paid, right? The thing is sometimes I see coaches, like for example, I've seen people trying to build a practice by doing things for free, and they were like, nobody wants to do it, even if it's free. And
Yeah.
sometimes that is a misconception because some people perceive free as worthless, and they're like, oh, this is free. I'm not going to show up or I'm not going to do it. And that sometimes is backwards, right? Like it's just a perception thing. It's not necessarily reality. You can be a great coach and do free work. That's what I'm trying to say. And you can charge them a lot and be a scammer, right? So that also can happen, right? But okay. Now I'm curious about one thing here. Like after you got rolling, right? And 6 years ago, who are the people that kept showing up? Okay. And I'm going to expand this question. Like in the early days for coaches, most coaches, not saying it's your case, sometimes we start helping anyone, right? We just want to make it. We have this mentality to serve and all that. But eventually we start attracting certain types of individuals that we realize, okay, this is my tribe. I can really help these people the most, right? So can you walk me through the evolution of your avatar, the ideal client profile from the early days, okay? And who do you serve now?
Yeah, so I think in the early days, it was very much people like myself, so a woman who'd been in some kind of leadership position in a finance or fintech environment, or actually any environment where maybe it was quite macho, where they had to like pretend to be someone else or be very assertive, be very masculine in their appearance or in how they work, etc., and not feeling so good about it. So imposter syndrome, all these kind of things. That was very much my profile, because I could relate to that very much. Then it also moved into the founder and startup person because of because of my husband initially, because I was then connected to a hub here where you have a lot of startups within that area, because I know fintech. So that was also a niche I had. And then building on from that, it became more and more leaders in general and high performers, because it doesn't really matter if it's a man or woman. We actually have the same problems, are the same regardless of gender, etc. And I think more and more are turned into people that maybe have success now, but they realize what's next. I've kind of climbed the mountain, and I expected now that I'm going to feel fulfilled and I'm going to be happy. And actually I don't, I'm happy for a week, and now I just need to look for the next goal. Or maybe I've been married twice, and, my relationship with my children is not very good, and I've done this to get up here. And now I have kind of my regrets. So what do I do from now? How do I get back to myself? So it's a little bit, I guess, this reconnection. And it's a bit fun in a way, because when I left the bank, that's how I felt, the lack of connection. And then I didn't focus so much on it in terms of my clients, but that's coming back a little bit now. And what I also realized that we all have that. So regardless of where you are, even if you're just kind of climbing the first mountain of trying to get to that success, you may not be aware of what's really driving me here, what's my values, who am I the person I want to be on this journey. But when I work with them, I try to kind of plant these seeds so that they kind of find themselves as part of this journey, as opposed to when they're up there. And then they have to, kind of come down. And does that make sense?
It does. It's like running back to, if I got it right, leaders and high performers, despite the gender, and eventually they hit a ceiling. That's one option. Or they're wondering what's next. And I wonder, think about that, right? The decision making we have to do, like in our 20s, like career wise, for example. Oh, I'm going to graduate in X, Y, and Z. And then 20 years down the road, we're not the same person, right? And we're seeing ourselves in potentially, I'm not saying that always happens, but in the career that we're not as fulfilled as we imagined. And that may not be just a career. You mentioned yourself, right? Maybe it's a relationship at home, so that really varies, depends, but I think I got it right. Did I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think because you're maybe so focused on your career, because you think, okay, this is where my success lies. The success for me is a good career, is a good salary, it's being able to kind of show that to everyone. And maybe I haven't put the time and effort into the things that actually matter to me, my relationships, and therefore they're no longer there.
Okay, that makes sense. Interesting. So, would love for us to do a little bit of a game of pretend here.
Uh-huh.
Let's pretend, Ellinor, I am your avatar, your ideal client profile. I'm one of those, leaders, high performers. And first of all, what I would like to do in this game is like for you to tell me, how would I be able to find you? Okay. Marketing wise, how would I be able to know you exist? So you can help me.
That's a very good question, because I'm not very good at marketing myself. So I'm glad that you asked that. So I think you would either find me because you know someone that has worked with me and you're saying, oh, I would like a coach, and then they would hopefully recommend me. So that would be probably how I get most of my clients. But otherwise, you would find me on LinkedIn. I also have a website, of course, but I'd probably need to do some upgrades there. So I'm not really doing any marketing of any sort, which I probably should do. But this is the status.
Okay, it's all good. We're still in the game. Let's say I was referred to work with you. Someone told me, dude, you gotta meet Ellinor. Or even I was just doing some Google or AI search and they're like, hey, check this website. I went to the website. What you got out there resonated with me. I was like, this is pretty cool. So I do the outreach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I always say, we can speed up the sales process, right? We can say there's alignment, or if you want to add a note there, totally fine. My real question here is, can you walk me through a little bit on the structure of how does it look like to work with you? Being on board, how does that play out? It's like one-on-one, one-to-many, and if you have like different offers, you can grab the bread and butter, the main one, right? And the outcomes I can expect of working with you, Ellinor.
Okay, so depending on, is it you alone, or do you want to do maybe with your team, maybe your management team? And I'm only always interested in what is it you're looking for? Is it your own personal development? And I would say we should normally start with that. How well do you know yourself? How self-aware are you? But let's say maybe you're building a team. So then we can look at, have you and two others right now. What are the profiles you need for the rest of the team? What are the skills? What are the kind of personalities and so on in order for you to do well? Or maybe there's a conflict in the team that you need to resolve. I also look at or work with conflicts. I would typically do like a Hogan assessment just to kind of get into the bones of what is your strengths, what are your blind spots, what is your what motivates you, what drives you. It can be we get faster into who you are really. So I would look at that, and that can typically kind of give some interesting questions and conversations. Then we would have, if it's just you, we would typically have like 6-7 sessions together. So an hour and a half sessions. So I would normally say I charge you 10 hours, and then those 10 hours will be kind of cut into 1.5 hour sessions. So the outcome, and again, why did you come to me? Is it because of your performance? You want to be more successful. Let's look at that and what's not working today. And let's look at how we can improve that. And by doing that, we need to probably go back and see where do these patterns come from, and, where are you in this? So self-awareness really always starts with knowing yourself, self-leadership. And then let's look at how does that affect your leadership with other people, whether it's clients or, stakeholders, or maybe your boss if you have one, or maybe it's your board. So, but yeah, it always starts with you as a person. So that's why I think the Hogan, or maybe even DISC, but I think Hogan are very good.
Okay. So if I got it right, we have a B2C and a B2B component, right? You facilitate teams and you walk through that, and we have like the individual, right? I got
Yeah.
those right? Okay.
Yes.
So which one would you say is like the main one? Your like percentage wise that you help the most? Is it like more B2B or B2C? 50-50?
Right now it's actually more teams that I'm working with.
Okay.
And it can also be like, people from various teams, and we do like a leadership training almost. So that's like a third version actually.
Okay. Interesting. I love teams. That adds drama, and I'm going to unpack that real quick. Okay. First of all, kudos to you. Because you're like, why did you reach out, right? And that's the work of a coach, right? I can sense the coach. It's purpose, like knowing your why. So love that. Now about the teams, right? Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I hired you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm like, Ellinor, help me with this team. They're underperforming and all that. And you're going to facilitate whatever that looks like with the team. And you realize, I'm not saying everyone, but there are a few bad apples there. They're like, who's this lady, right? Like, she doesn't know anything about our business. It's like you're sensing there's like some people that are not bought in, because at the end of the day, the person who hired you is the owner, CEO, whatever that looks like, right? But the team itself is like having some friction to accept you in the room. I'm not saying that happened with you, but I've seen that happening with different coaches, right?
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that?
Yeah, and that's a tricky one, as you said, because they are really not my client, right? As you said, the client is kind of the person who hired me, and that's not them. So that's a very interesting one. I think what I found is that works the best is to have a conversation with them alone, because there can be so many reasons why they react. I mean, for some of them, it's like, you touch something that they don't want to open up around, depending on what we're working on, right? So really talk to them and see, what's at play here? What's the stake here? What's at stake? Why do you challenge it? What's the problem here? And typically, I find that normally helps, and they can kind of get their head around it, and then we typically can work ahead. If I don't want to point to them in the room, because then they can get a reaction, and sometimes they are looking for that reaction to make me feel uneasy, and I don't want to give them that power. So, I would deal with them separately.
Okay. Now, second question. Let's say Pedro hired you again. I'm that guy, right? And I'm like, hey, Ellinor, help me with this team. And then you join and you start doing your own thing, assessments and all that. Start working with the team. And eventually you realize, okay, actually Pedro is a problem. Leadership is the problem. But I am the paying customer, and I'm kind of blaming them in a way, right? Not a lot of ownership on my end. It's like the team is underperforming. Distant language, right? So how do you navigate that conversation with me to make me realize actually the team is not the problem, Ellinor? It's good old Pedro.
Yeah. I think it's about asking questions also, so that you get some maybe realizations around your own behavior. And typically what that can lead to is that maybe you want some coaching. Maybe you want some coaching on the side, not just the team, but actually you want some coaching. And then we can look at, without kind of mixing in what they have said, how do you treat these kind of conversations and these kind of profiles and so on. Let's look at your profile. And that can also be a question about, okay, I think to kind of deal with the situation here with the team, we need to look at the layer above. And that's maybe not just you, Pedro. It could be other stakeholders as well, to not make it so personal.
Okay. Interesting. Now, let me ask you this. What would you say, Ellinor, is like the main misconception that people join you, right, as a client, whatever that looks like? And I know you have B2B, B2C, and if you can pick whatever you feel like it. Like the main misconception people join and they're like, and they're having that aha moment from working with you, right? I'm not saying everyone is the same, but if you can pinpoint a pattern that you unlock in people's minds that they're like, oh, never saw it that way? Do you have one for us?
I think there's a lot of, hopefully you will always get that right when you coach someone. I mean, an example could be, when someone's felt held back by something and then all of a sudden they can realize, oh, wow, now I can see what, maybe I've been seeing my father in this person, for example. That's why I got the reaction of this, because actually it's not Steve I'm talking to here. It feels I'm actually kind of putting my father into this picture. So it's like these kind of realizations that just can trigger an understanding, and thereby you can kind of change your pattern.
Got it. Okay. Now, would love for us to shift gears for a second. Okay. Talk a little bit about future. So curious about where you're taking all this, Ellinor. Looking ahead, where do you see, the business going? Are you thinking about scaling, hiring, or is there a next step you're excited about?
So I don't want to scale by having a team. I'm not looking to have other coaches working for me or so on. So I'm more looking at growing my own number of clients. So that's kind of the scaling I see. And it doesn't have to be, I think probably having the double revenue that I have today, probably in 3 years or so. That would be my goal.
Okay. And of course, whenever we're aiming towards a next chapter, a goal, there's always something we're refining in the present, right? So what are you currently trying to improve or even tighten up in your business right now?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of things that I can kind of tidy up and do better. I think now we mentioned about like marketing. So I would like to do more events. Quite enjoy that to kind of plant seeds in people's minds. So that's one area. And I think that could, of course, then generate also more clients by doing that. But I think in terms of what I need to like improve is not just be in my own head so much as I am, because I am a sole player, right? I need to maybe have my own coach and I think that's an obvious one. I think all coaches need to have a coach, to be honest. I just haven't found the perfect one that works for me. So I think for me to not internalize, I'm like really internalizing things. And then I tend to go in circles and I tend to procrastinate, and I get energy like most of us do by, executing and getting things done and reaching my goals, etc. And if I go in circles, I tend to feel I'm stagnating. So that's what I personally need to work on. And I think I'm probably, my biggest hindrance to what I want is myself.
Okay. I love the honesty, by the way. Now, I would love for us to do a little bit of a sci-fi thing here really quick. I know I mentioned I'm a comic book nerd, so there's that. So let's pretend, if you don't mind, we have a time machine in front of us. Okay, Ellinor? And we're going to have 2 stops, right? First stop, you can go back in time 6 years ago when you opened your own business, right? And you can give yourself, past Ellinor, one piece of business advice you wish you knew back then that you know now. Okay, what would that be?
I don't know if it's a business advice, but it's definitely the advice of be more daring. Don't be so perfectionistic. You live once. Who cares if it doesn't work out? What you're trying to do right now, just do it. Don't be so perfectionistic or overthinking.
Put yourself out there, basically.
Yeah,
like you're ready.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if you agree with that, but I've seen people in my network, right? Even friends and all of that. There are certain individuals, and I'm not saying that was your case, okay? Just FYI. Certain individuals that were like always trying to validate themselves with the next certification. And, it's like, oh, now I'm going to get a master's. I'm going to get a doctorate. And I'm going to get a PhD. Oh, now I need to, from this degree to another degree. Oh, I'm going to certification here. And they're just stacking up stuff so they don't expose themselves out there and don't test themselves really. You know what I mean? Do you feel like some people do that?
Yeah, but I definitely have a tendency to do that as well.
Okay.
So...
Me too. I had it too.
I've been doing, I do a lot of stuff, just to put some stars on my shoulders.
Okay.
Feel good. And you're kind of hiding, right? I mean, absolutely. And you can never be good enough. That's the thing. I mean, you can always be better. You can always come on, just get out there and do it. So of course you can do it at the same time, maybe, but it's better to be active and not just hide behind a book.
Yeah, that brings me back to the coaches, right? It's like I'm very different. Like I was so driven by certificates, degrees, and all that. And today I'm more like, at least in my own business, I hit a wall. Okay, who am I going to find to help me with that? Instead of I'm going to study this, so I know I'm going to be ready, because I know I'm not gonna be ready and things change. And then I hit a wall and I'm like, I thought I was ready. And then I'm back to study. I'm not, dude, that takes so long, right? Try to find someone who can solve it, right? Like you mentioned with the coaches.
Yeah.
100%.
No, it's such a good point. Ask for help. I think that's very hard for some reason, but yeah, absolutely. And also I think another thing is I used to be scared of, sharing my plans, or, I'm going to do this way, or I think, oh, then someone's going to steal it. That's just not how it works, So and I would say that to all coaches, don't be afraid to share what you want to do. And because by talking to people, we can just inspire each other, and what you want can be even better. And we can't just copy each other. And if they do, who cares, right? I mean, we're serving a good thing here. So,
Dude, that is so true. Like that's two-folded for me. Like first one is I love the who cares, right? I love that quote. The first thing I think about competition, it's just like, dude, it's just a way of seeing things. It's like if you're seeing them as competition and you have this scarcity mindset and you're afraid of them taking your clients, that's your own thing going on, right? Sometimes they could be a partner. They could be a coach that could help you on a contract level that you could be, you never know. You could get sick or injured, right? You could use some help eventually if you have a big client on a contract basis and you know someone who does the same stuff. That, so it's a lens at the end of the day. So that's
yeah.
one thing. The other thing is, like, I love the who cares because it brings me back to my first client, right? And my first client, I was like in the kids play in my at a park, and he was like, dude, I talked with him like 1 month later than that conversation, and it was like, it took me months to talk with you, to reach out. I'm like, why, dude? And it's like, you remember at the kids play, I tripped and fell and I hurt my finger. So I was embarrassed. And I'm like, dude, I don't even remember what I had for breakfast. So it's like, who cares, right? It's oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. And it's like having that perspective. We get so
100%.
into our own little, it's.
Nobody cares, dude. Like everyone is doing their own thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And everyone is so focused on themselves. So what you say, people don't even listen, to be honest. They just listen to be able to say their own thing. We shouldn't be so critical of ourselves. Oh God, what did I say now? Probably people didn't quite listen anyway. That's not a nice thing to say. Hopefully people do listen. But that is human nature, right? Unfortunately.
A lot of people are just thinking about the next stuff they're gonna say, and they have their own agenda. Most people are not present. That is so true. Okay. Now let's go back to our time machine. We went into a rabbit hole real quick. No problem. Second stop, you can go back in time, Ellinor, and you can pinpoint a moment in those, 6 years, your entire journey as an entrepreneur, that you felt so fulfilled that in a way you were like, this is why I started this. You know what I mean? And you may have several, but I want the top of mind,
Yeah. I mean, I think when I got my first big client, that was huge, but I wasn't maybe a fulfillment more. It was more like, yes, I can do this. I can live from doing this. I think for me, that was a very nice feeling. But maybe from a coaching perspective, I think it was probably the first client I had when I felt like, oh my God, something has really changed here for him. And now he's just got a very different view of, and he actually left his job to do his own thing. And because of our coaching. So that was huge because that was like my first real client that I felt like, whoa. But I think also, I mean, to be fair, the commercial side is also important. So the first big client was also like, now, I can do this. Now I know some people want to pay for it, or corporates wants to pay for it. This can be my life now. I think I've always been afraid that do I need to go back to my old career? That was always the kind of the threat that I felt. So that was also a big moment.
Okay. Love that. Okay. And if someone listening wants to connect with you or follow your work, Ellinor, and we're going to have on links in the description, but where can people find you best?
I think on LinkedIn. So Ellinor Glesner. Just look at me or find me on LinkedIn.
Okay. Now, there were a few moments from this chat that really stayed with me. Okay. Let me highlight them real quick. Back to the origin story when we were talking about your past, right? And you were at the bank and you told me something that was really powerful. It's like I didn't know who I was. That is so interesting because that really hits home in a way for me for my pivotal moment. And it's so cool to watch someone like you at the stage you're at and being open about stuff that you don't know everything, right? You're still learning. You had to figure out. You're not trying to pretend here someone you're not, that you're perfect or anything like that. So it's just like an obstacle in your own journey that you kind of own it today, right? So that's one thing. And that is aligned with my second point, which is like when I asked about, hey, how do I reach out to you? And you're like, well, I'm glad you asked, right? Because I'm not very good at marketing still, right? Still trying to figure it out. And at least for me, I think that's such a powerful asset for someone who's really, really a true coach, which is being vulnerable, right? And the reason I say this is because we, more often than not, we ask hard questions, right? We're getting our coaches very vulnerable sometimes. So it's only fair you meet them in the middle. You're as vulnerable as them. So that eases up the connection with them for sure. So there's that too. And last but not, well, not last but not, I have two more points. I love the fact when we were talking about the drama, right? The B2B side, and you're like, I pull them aside if they're creating a havoc or they're being resistant because I talk to them alone, right? And that brings me back to the fact that I think it all starts with the conversation, right? Sometimes I see relationships in different levels, right? Personal, business, and people are assuming something that will happen if they say X, Y, and Z. Or what would they think or what would they say? And dude, just start the conversation. Sometimes you're just creating a monster that doesn't even exist due to sometimes miscommunication. People didn't interpret right what we were about to say so it starts with a conversation. Love that point. Last but not least, that really is personal for me. You were like, sometimes they're picturing their father in someone else, right? Like you mentioned Steve, like, oh, so I'm reacting in a way because I had a bad relationship with X, Y, and Z, right? And I see that happening with myself personally, right? I have two kids, two boys, 4 and 8-year-old, right? And I don't have a great relationship with one of my brothers. And sometimes they fight my kids, right? Which, well, I'm a referee, right? I'm not a father. They fight constantly because of their age. And I'm like projecting and reacting because I'm afraid that what happened with me and my brother will happen again. But it has no connection with their bickering. They're fighting, and that's just nature, and that happens. I need to accept it. But in a way, I see sometimes that I immediately react out of fear, right? Which is a terrible way of pulling stuff, feelings, and all that, which is being afraid of something to happen because you always make a bad decision. You overreact and you're scared and all that. So this is just my long-winded way of saying that I appreciate what you do, Ellinor, and I appreciate you being here and sharing so openly today. It was great having you on.
Thank you so much. And I'm very, very grateful to be here and lovely to meet you and take part of your story as well. So thank you so much.
That's it for this episode. This episode, as well as this podcast, was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help business owners elevate their business to 6, 7, and 8-figure years, all without burning out. If you're looking to grow your business, as well as get the time freedom that you are looking for, visit us at joinpurplecircle.com and see what we can do to help you and your business.